Welcome everyone to the fifth installment of Conversation with Young Leaders. And for today's episode, we have Mr. Vishnu Bharadwaja. He is a co founder of Bleed with Pride organization and also the chair of Courage Simsa. Today's episode is hosted by Ms. Fahima. And without any further ado, let's get this episode started.
Hi, good evening to everyone. So, before we start today's show, what is pride? Pride is when you accomplish something, the feeling you get is called pride. But more precisely, it indicates the respect you have for yourself. And I think everyone should take pride in who you really are. Women should celebrate the essence of being a woman and embrace themselves proudly. We have such an organization with us today, Bleed with Pride. So, hi, I'm Fahima from IFPWD, welcoming you all for the episode 5 of Young Leaders session. Welcome, everyone. Introducing today's young leader of the session is Mr. Vishnu Bharadwaj, co-founder of Bleed with Pride organization, the recipient of Taruni Mitra Award to his excellent work in spreading awareness on menstrual hygiene, the chair of Council of Productive and Sexual Health and Gender Education called Courage. He was selected even for the research trained in CCMB, Central Government Research Institute, has been present in 12 international posters, presentations, and part of various scientific platforms and even Indo-Global Health Summit. National delegate in representing Nepal in Asian Medical Student Association Conference. And his prime areas of focus are towards public health, awareness through health education. He has strong research background and training. He is also interviewed by All India Radio in Telangana for the same. So I welcome you, Vishnu. Hi, good evening.
Thank you so much, Fatima. It was a very glamorous introduction. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, yeah, before we go into the session, Vishnu, we hear that every journey towards a success begins with a single step, but yours had 12 different steps. That is, coming about yourself, you started attending schools, 12 various schoolings in various districts, like, attending more from that to attending more than 15 science fairs, and also have heard that you were a semi-finalist in international science fairs, and also a part of the Xavier Student Ambassador Program, a core team even in blood donation program called Pravaha, and more responsible person. So as a young leader, how do you see yourself from where you started to where is your drive of inspiration that is, driving you towards a social health concern and towards this society? So where did this journey start from you?
Well, that's a very interesting question. So again, it's not a very filmy story, something as such. It's just like there are two parts of it. It's one thing is I was always determined to make myself a better person, and I've been trying for that every single day. And secondly, in this process, I wanted to make a difference. So at every work I did, I was trying to address these two concerns. And yeah, I guess that's kind of inspiration where I, you know, which drive me towards what I am today.
All right.
And like at this point, so I had a great educational background. Like I've been in very good schools. I've been in a favorable environment, and thanks to my parents, they've always been supportive of something more than academics, more than just textbooks. So my parents were always like, do what you love more than what's just needed.
Great, great. Yes, everywhere, more than ourselves, it's some that positive energy pushing us towards the better. So, yes. So, as I said, every journey has to begin with one single step. So, there should be an idea. A Bleed with Pride has made successful and remarkable changes in the society, especially for women. So, how did this initiation to such a great idea land? And also, tell me more about this method of approach that you follow in the organization, how it is unique. So please do tell us.
Sure. So the idea has started with a very simple challenge. That's all. So it's usually very stigmatized to talk about menstruation, and that too for boys, it's even more difficult. So I was like, how about is there some way I could do it differently than others? So this was a simple challenge I took upon myself. I was like, okay, let me just see that I could do it better than reminding people. One thing, considering that from a medical backdrop, this would give me an advantage. And secondly, because we had a training, like all the medical students have been trained in taking gynecological history. So you understand the sensitivity of the topic and how you're supposed to communicate it. So I thought, okay, let me try if there's something different I can do. And that was the time, like the founder of the organization, Ankita, she approached me and she was like, you know what, let's do a campaign. So when we started looking on how to do a menstrual hygiene campaign, and we found not much material towards it. It was we couldn't get a manual or something towards that. So there was a big book, a 350 pages book called Menstruopedia, which covered A to Z in converting a village, but that was not applicable for a few medical students to go and do a camping, because the information we convey is very precise, and the change we wanted to bring in was supposed to be in a very different format. So we were looking for something more concise version of that. So that's how we started out. And one the unique point with our camping, what in the first camping we adopted, was we did in a small groups. So instead of hosting multiple instead of few professionals talking to 100 people, we said, why don't we split up? Like two of us will take 20 members, and let's start having a conversation instead of using a PowerPoint or a presentation. So this got a very huge response. People were very comfortable in interacting when we just sat around. We were sitting on floor in a circle. So this made them very comfortable. So I thought, okay, this is working out. So let's improvise a little more upon it. And that's how we built something step by step.
Definitely. To see a man taking in charge and building up stones for a better safety and hygiene for a menstrual campaign for a woman, I think as a society, we are reforming for a better society as well. So, yes, coming to the next one, the ish talk. They say, like you're not supposed to talk that in public. That's what they call it. But now we have come a long way from there to finally normalizing certain things. Actually, they are normal. You need not normalize something that didn't exist. We are actually have to normalize the thing that is normal, and that is the state we are pushed into when it comes to women's menstrual hygiene. So especially when you do breaking taboos like the chupadi parta, to making the other gender understand, and even sometimes the own gender, like the female gender, to understand what the process of menstruation, to be in public. So how was that? How was the progression towards educating people, the other gender, breaking taboos? How did you handle that?
So for this, I should say we are not the only people responsible for it. There have been predecessors. Like if you look at the past 10, 15 years, people like Arnachalam Muruganathan have done some tremendous work. They have decreased the cost of sanitary pads from like something that was a luxury to something a basic necessity that people can adopt in their daily life. And then people like Manishi Schiller have created a huge widespread breakout on this. So then they started a huge conversation on this. And then a movie like Padman, like this made people, okay, this is something we need to talk about. So this is not something we need to be shy. And this was the space when we started out something. So I don't think if this predecessors would not have set up this kind of environment, we might have faced a lot of a suppression or resistance or a friction of what we wanted to do something with. So this environment kind of gave a very smooth stage for us to work on. And being medical professionals, it was never about men or women talking about it. It was just few medical students talking about health, or it was few doctors talking about health. So and somehow people always understood that. So this situation have set up a very smooth platform for us with reproductive health.
Yes, definitely. Like from this talk, you are making a change, even if it's a small school or from a school to a college. The women that we impact, as well as the other gender, through your organization, Bleed with Pride, and your other campaigns, it's definitely making a change in today's world. So applause to that first of all, and then yes, as
Thank
to
you so
many
much.
women and men who are concerned about this health, or and first of all to the women health, and then to the men who are concerned about the health of their women in their house, to both of them, let us talk briefly on the
I guess
menstrual
this is an
hygiene. I'm sorry.
I lost your voice. Could you repeat, please?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, right. Okay, is my voice audible now?
Yes.
Yes. So, as to many women out there, and also to the men who are concerned about the health of the women in their house, let us talk briefly on the menstrual hygiene of the women. Because women during the olden era, if you see, women were isolated because of poor menstrual hygiene and the bad smell that comes out of poor menstrual hygiene. But that became a taboo later. So, but today's women are improved, but still a lot of education should be given on menstrual hygiene. So, what do you talk about the menstrual hygiene, what they have to follow, and also throw some light on the safety disposal of such that, because it concerns the health of the society as well. So, yes.
So hygiene in general, if we take a look from a historic perspective, if we start looking at why this culture have started in a country, I see that there is a reason when it started, because that was a time we did not have enough tools to for a proper sanitation. So woman was bleeding, and the time of bleeding was not like a urine or stool. It was not something controllable. So you never know when this is going to happen, and because of which they kind of they said, you might need to rest in home. And if they say this point, not many people would follow. So it was conveyed as a part of culture. So they were like, as culturally you should be isolated, and the object of isolation was rest. But then it turned out to be something different in the current world. So it turned out to be a suppression, because again now women are going out equally as men, which is how it's supposed to be. And they're working as professionals. They're doing everything that's need to be that's equivalent to men. And this causes a problem in the current world when women are isolated. So they're being deprived of education, they're being deprived of work opportunities. So that's when, like, again, there's a transformation in the society that says, like, this is not needed. Let's so And we have better sanitation equipment today. You have sanitary pads, you have reusable pads, menstrual cups, and so all the and tampons and all these tools and methods. So it became easy for us to talk about hygiene. It's easy, it's practical for someone to maintain hygiene. So and coming towards the hygiene part, it's not a miraculous thing. It's a very simple process that somehow has not been conveyed correctly. And because it's not being conveyed correctly, there are a couple of problems in the society, like infections. In the state of Telangana, few years ago, and in the state that was a common state, Andhra Pradesh, and that was a time about 15-20 years back. Uh, there was a huge incidence of gynecological infections because people have not been following menstrual hygiene in proper. And if you look at the scenario in Nepal, there are the most common one of the most common cause of female death rate is Chaupadi Partha, in which, like, women are asked to sit outside the house during menstruation, and the mortality rate was high due to hypothermia or snake bites. So this kind of became an oppression on the later edge. So the processes which we talk about are something very simple and adoptable according to their economic feasibility. So if you are talking to a school student from a public school or from a central education school where students can afford sanitary pads, we speak more about the about, like, how you should change a pad for every 6 hours, and how do you clean yourself properly, because they have the facility available. They have proper washrooms available that they can probably carry a pad to the school, so they can go to the washroom and change it. But this situation would not be applicable when we are in a village talking there, because they neither have a toilet facility there, a washroom facility there where they can go and change. Or secondly, even if they want, like, their pads are not available to them. It's not a financial option for them. So this is where we talk about the tools which they have. The tool they have is a cloth. So how do you do better with a cloth so you're not infecting yourself? So as long as it's clean cloth and it's being sun dried and washed properly and sun dried, it should not be a problem. Of course, it's going to be a problem because of the bleeding, but the cleaning and hygiene part, that shouldn't be affecting. So this is how we started approaching the problem.
True, because hygiene plays an important role, be it menstrual hygiene or even the normal hygiene, because we have come to this era of pandemic COVID where even hand hygiene plays the major factor. So I think women out there should, have follow more menstrual hygiene in the upcoming days. Although there are women who are educated, still like campaigns like Breathe with Pride, like everything is focusing on making the women aware of a lot of such facts. Yes. So the foundation of any strong organization is its campaign. So Bleed with Pride, please do tell us about your landmark campaigns, because the wider the campaigns, the more impact it's making on the society nowadays. So that also includes that educating the school level kids, because to change the thought process of the current generation, it's easy, but it's not as easy as changing the entire next generation's thought through kids, because they form the next upcoming one. So changing their complete thought in the school towards better femininity. How do you think about that?
So again, it's as it's popularly said, kids are the next generation, and it's easier to reach out for kids in public health scenario. For let us say as simple as they're very structured. So you know that if you go to sixth grade, you have an average of 12-year kids or 11-year kids. If you go to seventh grade or if you go to 10th grade, you know there are 15-year kids, 15-year adolescents that are available in that institution. So when talking about menstruation, this age relevance is very, very important. So this gives you a nice classified environment whenever you're reaching out to school. And one thing is this gives a feasibility. This increases the comfort with which you're preparing your session and you're preparing your team to go and talk about it. So you know what are the topics that they would find relevance. Like a fifth grade kid might not find like period cramps a huge thing because they've never experienced it. But for someone in eighth grade or ninth grade, that would be a huge problem who just entered into their menarche. So we try to come up with age relevant content. And what was the second part of the question? I'm sorry.
The education system, like how do you educate school kids, because they are, as you said, they are just tender. When they see that, even the sanitary napkin, I can see their eyeballs coming out, they'll be like, what is this? That is how they feel. And I've seen like when we were in eighth grade, just then when such thing happened, boys used to run away from that room just so that they can avoid such presentations, and even girls will faint on that. I don't understand. So that is the type of people are scared them like that. So I think that idea should change. So how is this organization, what are your efforts on that?
So as I said in the first campaign, that was done in a school. And when we divided girls, in that campaign, we only targeted girls. So we made them sit in circles and we started having a conversation with them, which we found them they were very comfortable interacting with us. So we said, okay, let us expand our reach to the next level. Let's try something a little more different. And let's even teach boys, because at some point of their life, girls will know the required health points, if not from like an educational institution, from their parents, relatives, or cousins, or anyone, like they will know about it. But the problem, like if you want to take away the stigmas, they should be able to have a free conversation with the men around them. So we thought, okay, let us start this like training in the schools with the boys as well. So and in this process, we start our campaign with a couple of icebreakers. So we first introduce ourselves, then we play a couple of games with them, and that's when they get familiar and they get really comfortable. That's when we start the topic. For boys, we do it like we show them sanitary pads and we ask them, have you ever seen this in your house? And we take popularly advertised brands there. So they're like, I've seen this in TV, but I don't know what this is. I asked my mom about this, but she said I'll know when I grow up. So these are the answers you hear very commonly from the boys. And some of them even told me like, this is probably a packet of bread. So I said like, okay, why don't you open and see if there's bread? Maybe we can all share a bite. So then the kid opened it and he was like, this is not bread. And like, yeah, then what is this? Like, I don't know. So then we gave out, we distributed the sanitary pads across the class. And they were like, okay, what is this? What are these? And some people were scared. They were just throwing them away. And that's when but there was a small curiosity that was created. We asked them, we spoke about a couple of scenarios that they find relevant. Like, have you ever seen your mom like very frustrated someday? Like with a small thing, which is very unusual of her. And they're like, yes. Or have you seen your sister? There was a function, like especially in South India, they do a function whenever a girl starts menstruating. So have you ever seen that happen? So they were like, yeah, but I don't know why they did the function. When I asked, they said, like, again, when you grow up, you'll understand. So why? So then we ask these questions. Why do you think this happened? So naturally, they become curious towards the topic, because at some point they were wondering why this happened, and then people started commenting about this whenever they talk. So they started accepting, like, this is wrong. So after some time, this like within this 10-15 minutes, they gain that curiosity back. It's a very natural thing with the kids. They're curious about everything. So they gain that curiosity back, and they were like, they're actually willing to know something about it. That's when we start talking about it. So and the same thing with girls also. So we ask them about this. We start with a couple of icebreakers, a couple of introductions, and we always go with the female teammates, like our female medical students that are in the team. So one of them starts speaking about their own experience, and for some reason, like every time we do this camping, many people start relating to it. So they're
Yes.
like, okay, this happened to me as well. Maybe I want to, I want to listen more about this. So this kind of curiosity works a lot when you're doing a camping.
Yeah, more than campaigns holding placards and showing some modules on that. It's the interaction that actually breaks the ice. It's the interaction that people think, okay, so this is normal to talk. People are talking to me, and I can share my experience. And with a lot of people coming together with the experience as a whole, when you see it from an outside aspect, that is the change that we need. To bring through a kid's mind to that kid, when she or he grows into an adult, that is where we make the change. That's where we play the card. So I think as an organization, it's a very good campaign, we could say. So yes, women are important people in everybody's life, be it a mother, a sister, a girlfriend, a wife. So, but saying the physiological process of menstruation on one aspect, we should also talk about the psychological aspect, like how there is something called the safe space. So, what is it, and how should the society actually respect that space for women?
So this again started with a very funny scenario where a friend of mine walked in and very frustrated that his girlfriend was not responding properly with something, with a conversation they had. And then another other friend, like a girl, she was like, she's on her periods, dude, just give her a break with this. And then we were like, what if? Then a thought came into my mind. I was like, what if he knew that she was in periods? Like, I know this guy, he wouldn't be reacting that rashly on that scenario. So I'm like, okay, so what if girls are able to convey this part in a respectful manner? And what if we have an accepting space? So then we came out with a word called safe space. And so in our campings, like later when we were improvising our camping, after every session we sit, we evaluate, and we have a new module updated after every camping, because every time we see a couple of new problems. The one we have is right now we have the updated version, but initially we were not talking about mood swings. So then we said, okay, so mood swings are a very important problem, but how do we actually communicate them? So then again, I sat with a couple of guys and a couple of girls, and then we were asking, so what makes you have the mood swing? So how do you exactly feel? And they're like, we don't know. So they're like, we don't know, we just irritated a lot. And this was the most common response I got from my friends. So okay, so we started listing out the actual feelings that they started feeling, that they were expressing. So we had very different answers. And so then we said, okay, so how can you convey this to one family member? And many people found that accepting. So then we tried that in a campaign. So we said the people, like, have a safe space. Like, your safe space can be one person in the family, whoever is accepting. Like, if your mother is comfortable talking with this to you, go to your mother. If your father is you're comfortable talking this to your father, go to him. If you have a sister or brother, you can go to him. Or if you have a boyfriend, you can talk to him. So whoever, it's like one person in your life, preferably your family. And so just go and inform them, like, this is how these are the needs you have in menstruation during your periods. So I have these kind of cravings, this is my mood. So have a normal conversation with them. And they're like, it's very awkward for us to talk about this. And it's like we never spoke about this. Then we said, okay, we have a pointer for you. So whenever, like, mostly you will have a TV time with your family. So you're sitting with your family, you're watching something, and then there's a sanitary pad ad that pops up on the TV. So ask them, do you know what this is? And that's when you start a conversation about this. And this actually worked for a lot of people.
True. Basically, everything that we learn starts with our family. And that is the family who keep about these talks. They are the first ones to say that you will learn it when you grow up. So it is our turn this time to teach, and started with our family. So we have to all make a small change at the family level to, when at a larger aspect, it looks better because our family knows us, and that is the feeling of confidence that every woman should need out there. And yes, safe space is again, it should, this term should become normalized, because there is this one side we are struggling to make menstruation normal, and now we are making it safe space, which is linked to that menstruation again normal, which all should be like, it should be in a casual women. There will be a day that every woman can talk about this one day, like to anybody. So yes.
So, addressing just that cause, we thought we will take this safe space to the next level, which is one of our future projects.
Great,
So
great.
we thought, what if we could implement a safe space into an institution? So in home, it's quite simple. You could just start with a conversation, and you have everything you need. So can we arrange the same things at an institution? So we are developing every single challenge, and also again, I guess this is the first of its kind campaign, where I've not come across a guideline that I could follow. So we had to define our objectives very clearly. So we said, like, there should be a sanitary pad availability at the school. Then you should have a changing facility, which many schools does not have. If we look at government schools, they do not have decent washrooms where they can change pads. And the second thing is, they're very stigmatous about carrying a pad. If someone sees it, it's a big huge issue. And one of my in one of our campaign, a participant was saying, like, apparently a guy was searching for a book in her bag, and like, he found a pad, and that became a huge issue in the school. So that was a gossip of the class. So we thought we should normalize this. So men should be educated about it. All the boys should be educated about it. And then we designed a situation. We thought, like, we'll train boys, we'll train girls, and then we'll make them do an activity which is related to this. So we'll have a small competition, and we'll have prizes for it. So that way we have designed a whole 1 week program for it. And then we were about to execute. Then the pandemic happened.
This pandemic has opened its own doors. As you said, even I could remember when I taunted a girl. She was just taking her pad secretly, and she was putting inside her skirt. And then I alerted all the boys in the class, telling she's taking some chocolate in her skirt, and she was running through the corridors. So I don't know. We have to change that as well, because sometimes it's funny, but when you see it, it's kind of serious. She did not be that scared. So that is how we should change. Yes. So talking on this, so the brilliant effort by Bleed with Pride is the installation of sanitary pad at public sites. So how many have you launched, and throughout the year, what is your progress? I heard 40 sanitary dispensaries and 2 at government schools. So how did the society receive this, and what is the impact that you're making?
So in the first year of the campaign, we did about 3 to 4 campaigns, and then again, the founder of the organization. So Ankita decided, like, she saved a couple of her salary, her stipend for 2 to 3 months. She was just starting up with the internship then. So she saved a couple of her stipend, and she was like, maybe I will like, buy a sanitary pad dispenser. And then she started reaching out for sources, and it was not available in Nepal at all. And then we found out there was not a single sanitary pad dispenser in the whole country. So like, she was an Indian citizen, like, her family was based in India, so she could source a sanitary pad. She brought it from India and installed it in there. Of course, again, with the customs and everything, it costs it cost is also high. So and then after the first sanitary pad installation, we got a lot of press attention. So we never expected this would happen, but then we had it. So then a lot of medical students in Nepal itself have started reaching out to us. They're like, how do we do a campaign on this? So, and that's when we found the need of standardizing this. It's not just us doing. So most of the situations, it was like they would invite us. And it was not always a feasible scenario with the college, with her duties with my college. It was not a feasible scenario for us to travel and do the campaign. So we said, okay, let's develop a module. Let's have an interaction with them. So initially we were having a call with them and explaining, like, this is how the process goes, this is how it works. So this module works best. Then we started making a document and we started circulating it. So they read it and it's self-explanatory. So, and whenever we were doing campaigns, we would do a capacity building session. We would train a couple of medical students, and we would train them with all the challenges that they would be facing in field, including upscaling and downscaling the event. It's like, what if your audience respond way too better, and what if they do not?
Yes, because a lot of women, when they like, I have seen women, and I myself a woman. I've seen people like getting their cycles randomly and searching for pad, asking other girls. When it's such a miserable situation, and such ideas are like boon to people, because as well as you can help the rural population, but even in institutions, people are like they forget sometimes, they misplace their pads and they search for something and they can't immediately get access to it. So I think it's one of the brilliant ideas that's going to change. We have to implement this everywhere, and
So,
good success to all of that. So
thank
yes,
you.
about you, you've worked in integrated medicine. So integrated medicine along with allopathy, it's a part of World Ayurvedic Congress. You are right.
Yeah.
So discuss about the you implemented implementation of Ayurveda verified in the modern epidemiological data, right? So how is today's world responding to integrated medicine approach, and what was your project about? Please do share.
Sure. So again, it was just a very random conversation with my dad. So I was like, there was a conference upcoming, and I wanted to be a part of it. So am I audible? I have a stuck internet connection.
Yes, yes, you're audible.
All right. Okay. So yeah. So I was having a very random conversation with my dad, and I was trying to brainstorm and come up with one practical project that I could do in the limited time frame I had. And then we worked. We discussed like over 50, 60 ideas, and none of them were possible because of the regulations or with the practicality of the trial. It was not working out. So then my dad was like, you know what, I can't help you. Just read this book. And so I was going through that book, and I found a very interesting concept that says like that classifies the diseases in Ayurveda. They speak in terms of doshas. They say they have classified the whole world with its nature. So the basis of this classification is way too complex, but the practical results, the practical applications are a fundamental concept for an Ayurvedic doctor in understanding their disease. And in a modern way, like it's kind of a genetic approach for the pharmacology. So they analyze your dosha composition, and they design the treatment accordingly. That of the disease, that of the place you're living, and everything are considered as the factors. Even some treatments, they consider the time which it's supposed to be given. So they say that if a treatment is given in the morning, that's more effective. Some given in the evening are more effective. So considering all these things, it was very fascinating concept for me. So I wanted to verify, like I wanted to understand it, which I could not. It is a way too complex basis towards it. But I wanted to verify how practical could it be. So I started looking out. I started using the same guidelines of that. So they call something as Anupadesha and Jangala Desha, which are again related to Vata and Kapha. So I had to go through a lot of meteorological data because it was a geographical region, and these were geographical and meteorological parameters. They say like a dry land, which it should have like a least rainfall, high wind speeds. So accordingly, I've classified the geographical locations. I had to do a whole meteorological survey of India, which states are fitting into that temperature zones. And then I had to like go and study the outbreaks that were happening. So from these outbreaks, then I got the data. So I decided, okay, I did a comparative study. So what is the prediction according to the Ayurvedic statistics? Is there a pattern that can be found? And surprisingly, after these many years, after changed huge environmental changes, these were applicable. So there was still a pattern of a disease I could see in the progression. So like maybe if we could someday more specifically, get this data towards uh, in a pattern in a very like village specific. So my study was towards a state level. Again, environment changes. There's a huge change in environment at a single point of time. So if we could specify it towards a village and towards multiple diseases which affect multiple systems, we could probably come out with interesting patterns, and we could probably predict the patterns of outbreaks that would be happening. So this was a hypothesis. I started with a hypothesis, and I was able to end with a better and a bigger hypothesis with the background data I collected. And this I have presented in the World Ayurvedic Congress, and I was the only not just a modern medical student, I was the only undergrad student presenting in the whole session. So
Yes.
we had a huge response for my presentation, and there's a huge acceptance among the Ayurvedic community with this approach too.
Yes, being an undergrad student, to complete human anatomy, physiology, and all that, you are integrating another medicine on the whole. Because after pandemic, things are not only confined to allopathy. We have started looking beyond the horizons and the other medicines like Asiddha, Ayurveda, and every other forms. Because this is not a narrow track. We have finally understood it's an integration of everything that makes the human existing and solution to all the problems too. So, an undergrad doing a research on Ayurvedic with epidemiological data is like a boon. Like people are learning from you, and that is why you are here on this show as a young leader. You are leading a lot of people today. Yes. So, training on trainees. Yes, more than acquiring knowledge, it is more important to pass it on to a lot more people so that we can benefit the society. You can't acquire the knowledge and hold it with yourself, and that is one of the amazing thing that you're doing. You're training on ground. You have trained more than 150 students, and now because of pandemic, you're training more people online for this sexual and reproductive health. So how is this idea expanding? And also talk about the small working group volunteer model that you spoke about. So
Sure.
there are two aspects. Yes.
Sure. So again, coming towards the pandemic, like okay, let us say before the pandemic, if you want why I had to start up a training for trainers program, it's again a very simple situation. I was always the last bench student who you'd find playing PUBG at the end of the class or mini Malaysia at the end of the class. So then that's because I wanted something more exciting in a class, like something very, very, very thrilling to learn. So I said, okay, when I'm doing something like that, I don't want, I know all the ways like my friends would avoid a class. I know all the ways they've been doing because I've been doing that with them. So I said, I need to do something different so that they would be more interested towards my session. And so that's how I started orienting the training for trainers program. It was a fun, and it was more like a challenge. It was more like a game kind of scenario what I created. So I made about 10 teams in which, like, first we do a capacity building session. We talk about all the challenges you face on ground, and then we divide them into teams, and then we create a belonging feeling for them. So it's like again, it's like they have a name for the team. Some people even design logos. Some people build 3D models where they could explain with it. So they create a very belonging feeling, and they some people make tags, name tags, and they give out some props to the kids. So people just loved it. So they loved creating something, uh, and something very, very, very personal to them. And then they could attribute it to the kids, right? And even kids were connecting a lot to this. Like a small prop that they could take home was something, it was drawing their interest a lot. So we started creating all these things for a session. And for this to happen, we had a game kind of format. So we had a scoring system, and we said, like, we could probably give you a prize at the end. Then people were like, okay, they were a lot excited, and they were started doing this. So I understood, okay, this was a fun way to train people, and it was a break from monotonous medical studies. That's very stressful at most of time. So and yeah, so that this format of like training for the trainers, I thought we could expand it. And when I came back to India from Nepal, I observed that the situation of menstrual hygiene is different. In Nepal, there were not many organizations. Of course, there are a lot, but not many that would compensate the requirement in the society. But in India, we have many organizations that are working towards menstrual health. The only problem is they're run by non-medical people, so they might not understand health aspects as good as we do. So we said, okay, why don't we start training these people? So that would improve their campaigns, and this is how we would increase the reach. And this was also a comfortable positioning for myself, where I could be compensating with my academics, with my other researchers, and other avenues within my career, and still be able to do the impact which is needed. So this is how I started collaborating with a couple of organizations, and I've started training their people. So every time we create something fun accordingly. So every session is a new challenge.
Yes, people are volunteering themselves to learn more about this. Then that is the essence of spreading your campaigns and attracting people towards this. Yes, nowadays, if you see today's generation, they are towards society. There are more people coming to volunteer for health services, so that's a good change. And yes, talking about SAPNE, that is a sexual abuse psychology, nature, and its evaluation. It's a first of a kind workshop online on sexual abuse, and you also cover pedophilia as a psychiatric disorder. Reaching more than 1,100 people online is to facilitate better understanding and share with us more about this session that's happening.
So again, as I said, with the pandemic, we've done a study of over a year, and then we come up with a module that was extremely successful on ground. And whenever there was a conversation of an online module, we rejected it because we considered it was not effective. So with the pandemic, we didn't have a choice except create something on online. And like I had the resources, I had the experience and knowledge to create an interactive session online, but we didn't have the audience, we didn't have a scope to reach out to the audience. So this is when South Indian Medical Student Association, SIMSA, they came in. They were like, let's have a collaboration. So then we signed an MOU with them, and this gave us a huge audience. So in the first week of interaction, like I was training again, I was training my council. So they were initially it started with 6 people, and today we have a 14-member council, and there are 35 local officers and more than 60 volunteers. And most of them, so yeah, it's just been about 3 months, and we have a huge capacity now to impact something. So we started, like I started training people, and then we started brainstorming on ideas which were feasible in lockdown, which were feasible to do online. And we just did not want just a routine webinar kind of format. We wanted something much more than that. So we created something very different. Our first session was upon porn and pleasure, and that got a huge like a feedback from the people. The moment we started registrations, within I think, yeah, within 4 hours we had more than 400 or 500 people registering with the session. So again, we upscaled it, and our plan was initially to do the session for 50 people. So we upscaled it, and we did a session for over 200 members. And uh, so remaining people did not register with the session in the required deadline. So we went into the first come first serve basis, and we expanded the maximum capacity we could. And then came in. So then we understood, okay, people are responding a lot to us. So let's come up with something more better. So then we structured an online session. We start with safe space norms. We created a safe space norms. First, we had to design online safe space norms. So again, we sat in, like I have an amazing team of medical students, which are from various colleges in South India, and they're extremely enthusiastic, extremely creative, and like they had to be a part of council. I gave them a very complicated hackathon. So they had to complete 3 tasks within 12 hours of time. So and each task, usually it takes 12 hours to do a single task. So such 3 tasks have to be done in 12 hours, and that was also given in the night. So like most of the people like who cracked it have stayed up all night, or they had to do a lot of research, and it was literally an adrenaline rush for them, most of them, to complete it. So with this, I got a very capable team. So I said, like, we created a safe space norms, and we start our session with emphasis on that. And in middle, we start with icebreakers, with movies, or with a couple of scenarios that people relate a lot with them. And then we go ahead and have a breakout room in middle of the session. And so in breakout room, we have a pointers and a discussion. So we train people again to be moderators of a session, where they are not talking, but they're making people talk. And then we have a place where people share their experiences, in which the response was something we never imagined. So we did 6 sessions of Sapne with each about 40 members. And they were people like literally opening up and sharing their abuse experiences. They were men or boys who have undergone abuse, and they were women who have undergone abuse, child sexual abuse. I'm not even talking about as adult. So in like out of 6 sessions we did, in the 5 sessions we had an average of 5 participants from each session that were opening up and sharing the personal experiences. So and again, we were receiving texts. We even put it on our Instagram. So they were like, this felt like a therapy session. For the first time after this, I'm going home and I'm talking with my parents about this. I'm talking with my sister about this. So we got these responses, and it was so heartwarming to see the difference we could make online. So and all this was possible because of our collaboration with SIMSA. And so I was elected as a chair of Council of Reproductive Health and Sexual Gender Education, so which we call Courage. So with this, we could multiply our reach online. So now we have open sessions where any local officer can decide, and they'll be given the material and information that's required to host, and they can go ahead and host these activities.
Is so as a child abuse or even an adult, the fact that you cannot talk about it to anyone is more harming than the child abuse itself. It's the mental strength that it gets destroyed completely more than the abuse itself. So when they get to speak it out in a forum with someone else, and the other person is as showing their empathy and love towards us when we share such thoughts, I think it's validating us to a next level. Like, yes, I have people to take care of me, and the world is not a bad world, because people who have gone through abuse have this bad idea that the world is a bad, they get the fear, they live with fear throughout a segment. But when they start talking about it, they feel the positive aspect of the earth as well, thinking, okay, this is just a phase, and we have to move on after that. So that's again, Sapna is a good initiative on that aspect. Is so expanding your boundaries. We have also saw venturing into LGBTQ community and knowing your rights online about associated with the cybercrime. Yes. So one side we have this, we have to equally treat the transgender. Nowadays, more transgender community people are coming into the society in a good positions. So how do you see that aspect of transgender improvement?
So again, talking about this, last year I've attended a workshop. Basically, again, that was a training for trainees program where I was certified to be CSE educator, so comprehensive sex education trainer. So in which I understood, like until I attended the workshop, I never knew gender was a spectrum. So until then, I myself thought gender was binary, or it was tri in nature. It was like man, woman, and then trans. And that's when, like, after I attended the session, I understood the whole spectrum of gender. It was not just man and woman anymore. So this kind of blew my mind, literally. It's like, this was such a basic information. Why wasn't I told anywhere until like, I'm almost a doctor. And this, even now, like, I went on seeking for this knowledge, I got it. So shouldn't it be more normal? Shouldn't more people be knowing about it? So that's when we thought, like, we should make something about this. So again, we developed the campaign on behalf of Live with Pride, and we executed it in the lockdown itself. So again, we started, that was again one of our first sessions in the lockdown. So we were talking about safe space norms. We were doing a couple of icebreaker activities online. And we tried with over 30-40 audience, and it worked out well. And then again, I worked with a couple of other organizations that were hosting LGBTQ. And recently, about 15 days ago, we hosted a whole panel discussion with Simsa. We have over, I guess, 600 views on YouTube. And yeah, this was done by a retired journal, which with a combination of Shiv Shakti Foundation, us, and there was a trans panelist among us. And with that, we were able to, like, this was our journey with the LGBTQ plus.
Like, we as a women, I like, just like you said, even as a medical student, I know only man, women, and then transgender. But when we embrace ourselves, we have to embrace the human community as well, because there are very different type of communities existing, and we all coexist. So it's our right to know that whom we live along with, and we have to embrace them along with embracing ourselves. So that's how it goes when it comes to LGBT community. Yes. So now that pandemic, after hitting pandemic, things have gone from on ground sessions to online everywhere. But if you see, there is completely an entire aspect of this online thing going on, which is called the, like, you have to know your rights online, because there are a lot of things, like in the online forum, people are getting abused. There are comments that are going worse. And one side, yes, there is a positive note, positive uses, but the negative impact that people are facing psychologically as well as through online. So how do you address this aspect? Because there was a recent session of Know Your Rights Online with cybercrime, which became a major hit, right? Yes.
Yes. So basically, we start again in the initial stages of lockdown. We were still trying to figure out, and that's when we collaborated and hosted a session with Cyber Jagrati. So they're a popular organization towards cybercrimes, and they have. So that's when we organized a panel discussion where I was a moderator. I had a advocate, a legal person who is actually experienced in dealing with online based sexual crimes. and a cyber consultant to Telangana Police, who is again who takes up a technical perspective towards it. And we got in and we hosted a panel discussion. So that's when we understood, okay, that there's so much that could happen online. And we also wanted to focus on a sex positive approach, which many people do not focus upon, which many people do not give a thought process towards. So somehow when we talk about sex, people are always imagining the negative stuff, but it's a very essential part of life. It's a very integrative part of pleasure and a healthy life. So we also wanted to find out if it's possible to have a safe online intimacy, because it's pandemic, it's tough meeting people outside. So we wanted to explore these possibilities, and then we came across a scenario, and we even have dealt a couple of cases where a couple of girls were being abused online. Like they're creating few fake profiles, and um, outraging their modesty on Instagram, basically by creating multiple fake profiles.
All right.
So with this, we came up with a new approach towards it. So we started like talking more about it, and ultimately, as a conclusion, I can say there is not 100% safe manner. Like again, there are apps like Snapchat or Confide where safe sexting is possible, but like if they're taking screenshots or photos from another device, that's something you cannot prevent. So yeah, that's about that.
True, true. So we have one of our audience put up this question for you today. So
Okay.
I'll ask that. Okay.
Sure.
So the audience they are asking it. So please do tell about how much you know on this, because a little bit of studies revealing that the assertion gender is a spectrum, is based on liberal arts, feminist theories, and that not based on scientific studies. So, while true, the term trans does not exist, the way to establish gender is not by chromosome but by gametes, of which there are only two types, which is sperm and ova. So, how is one to interpret that gender is a spectrum theory when there is little or no scientific basis behind it? They are telling. So, this is
So
completely from the audience. Yes.
So I would again ask this person like why they say there is no scientific evidence towards it. So if you take a look, there are multiple diseases, right from Klinefelter syndrome or super female. Basically, there are multiple chromosomes that are happening. There are genetic disorders where chromosome is half split, or there are multiple chromosomes in a single person. That too, sex determining chromosomes. This is something you teach for an eighth grade kid, for a 12th grade kid. And I would again like ask the person to go back and read a little more on genetics before they talk about the scientific perspective, because I'm pretty certain there's more than enough evidence. And not just in humans, you take a look with the animals, the gender is never determined by the gametes. If you take a look with the crocodiles, external temperature determines the gender. If you go towards zebrafish, outside, like if the water has more pH and if it has more salinity, they change into female. And if the favorable environment is very favorable, animal can change into male. So this change is happening right in the body, and it can happen multiple times in a lifetime. So like who brought this concept of gender has to be male and female? Nowhere in the nature it was. And even in the humans, if we take a history, like we have a whole handbook, maybe I could share with you after the session. Until the British period, we were very much accepting towards the trans people. So even they were military army journals who were trans people. They like even before that in Kama Sutra also they mentioned about trans people, and they were just treated like any other people. They were not stigmatized or they were not traumatized anywhere in the history. But when it comes towards the British Empire, that's when we started defining a boxes, a man and a female, and that's when we started like the binary approach of gender have started. And second point of gender is it's the reason why I say it's gender, not sex. There's a huge difference between these two terms, which again many people are not aware. So sex
Yes.
is what is determined by gametes, but gender is something which you experience. And there are three ways of your identity. So one is the anatomical identity, second is how you identify yourself, and third is how you express yourself. Apart from this, there's your sexual orientation and your romantic orientation. So I would ask the person to please read more about this. So if you have any questions, you could reach out to us on Bleed with Pride Instagram, and
Yes.
we could probably try and explain more on this.
Yes, yes. I think it's a bit of worry for the person asking this, that the true trans exist, but only there are two genders to call everywhere. So that may be the problem. Like that. All right. So coming to the final thing of this session is that I kept the best for the last, and that is your idea that blew my mind. Is that validation of actual practices? Like when you saw it in a different perspective. Yes, there are different faiths, and there are different cultures followed because of faith, but actual thing is they are all true processes. Like we have to know the scientific thing behind that instead of just validating it on faith basis. So yes, so people should voice out for more validation of actual practices. Look what's behind it. So this idea of new perspective, you're bringing a new perspective for the public health. So you're not just any person who came, did the service, and you just did a lot more service for the people, but you're changing the perspective of public health. And that thing blew my mind. Yes, talk about that. Definitely everyone wants to hear on that aspect.
Sure, sure. So basically, again, I believe that a culture or any religious or a cultural background, it it has evolved in a time, and maybe at a point of time, it has its own purpose, but its relevance needs to be checked again right now. So if you take a look at sati, it was relevant in the time when it was happening. So that was when India was facing a lot of foreign invasions, and including like almost all women were treated nothing more than sex slaves once they were taken back. Not they like even the queens were treated in a very humiliating manner. So for women at that point of time, it was essential. Like they felt instead of losing my dignity or losing my self-esteem, it's better to lose my life. So again, if you want to apply that to the current scenario, it's very bad. It does not make any sense for someone to die because the husband died. But then husband was the only source of protection. So it was a time relevant practice which needs to be ended, and it is ended. So there are some practices which could be relevant to our time too, and they are there in every single culture. So in public health approach, like even with the pandemic, we're trying to talk so many people about the masks and about the hand hygiene, which are very two simple practices. But how many people do we see following outside? Definitely not many. And by the rate of the disease increase or the pandemic increase, we can obviously understand it's not working out the way it is supposed to be. What if we take a different approach? Because in a country like India, if religious people talk about health, it is considered very auspicious. And even without the scientific basis, people are willing to accept. So why not you validate the existing processes in the religion which are relevant to the time in a scientific method, and then you campaign it not just with the scientific people but also with the religious leaders. So I guess this could make, of course it's a very random idea, it has to be tested, and it has lots of practical issues that to be addressed before it goes on ground as a medical campaign. But if this is possible, I guess I feel personally like it could make a lot of difference.
True, true. Yes, we are looking forward to breaking a lot of myths along with this. People should get to know, because it's long time that technology is overpowering us. So we should use the same technology to break the ancient scientific methods on all that. So yes. So what are your future plans? So that will conclude this session, because I'm sure you will have a lot of plans that you couldn't execute because of pandemic. In spite of that, an online platform you are doing really great. But what happens after this?
So like once we have a safe situation to go outside, like of course right now there's no lockdown, but there's still a pandemic raging. So once we have a safe situation where kids are we could have institutions like educational institutions functioning normally and safely. That's when we want to go ahead with our project Safe Space. We have enough capacity to do that now. We have medical students who are enthusiastic. We have trained a full capacity of it, and we collaborated with a few fellows from Teach for India, and we collaborated with a couple of dental students, and we have some medical students, software engineers as well, who worked on this on development of Project Safe Space guidelines. So we want to go ahead and execute it in ground where we could actually change an institution into a safe space for a menstrual hygiene. So we are again defining the guidelines. One says there are 5 simple guidelines for that. One says girls should be able to talk among girls regarding menstruation without any taboos. Second, girls should be able to talk among the boys without any taboos about the menstruation. Third, the same with the teachers and remaining faculty in the school. And four, that they should be able to carry a sanitary pad without any hesitation, without covering it, without any fear of someone judging it. And five, should be able to change it in the school safely in a hygienic, proper process. So for this to happen, they need to have access of a sanitary pad and also an access of a changing facility in schools. So with this is one of our project from Bleed with Pride. And on behalf of SIMSA and Courage, we are trying to develop a confession platform, basically a safe space towards mental health, and which is again associated with the reproductive health as well, where people will come and speak about it. And we are planning to launch an activity towards uh, more towards mental and reproductive health. We're thinking to call it, of course, testing name is something called You Love. So understanding love. Basically, we'll be talking about the physiological process that causes love, and what are the problems that current generation is facing in the relationships, and how do you address them with the breakups and the heartbreaks, and how do you get over a person. And so this is something, one of our project, and we're also trying to come up with an online forum where like an online support group kind of thing, where people can openly talk about the issues they have in anonymity. So we're again working with the software teams, we're working with our council towards making this happen. And we are also working with a trans person who was a panelist in our other session. So we're trying to get the guidelines, because apparently corporates have a support group for trans people in them. So we're trying to get the guidelines from there and try to implement it, like basically adapt it towards a student council and then implement it.
Yes. Yes. So, with starting from menstrual hygiene, you're covering your boundaries, expanding it to different fields, like from transgender to talking about making love and bringing all together under one forum. I think it's a blooming idea. Let your ideas bloom like this as always. And so yes, so it was a wonderful session with you, Vishnu. Amazing. Like whoever is viewing us today will know what we are talking about, because this is not an easy topic to have a discussion. So knowing about you, as well as knowing about your campaigns, your other things that you're going to implement, it's so nice to know that a man can take this much efforts. I think every man out there, more than women raising their voices, when men take it out, we feel like, yes, we are being voiced out. No, I'm not being feministic here, but then it's nice. It's more empowering as a society. We can see that clearly when we see organizations like this talking about it. So yes, so thank you so much for coming to today's session. It was a very nice and amazing session with you, Vishnu. So let's not hide, but it's time to bleed with pride, and that is what I call this entire session. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Fahima, and it was really fun interacting with you, and I'm so glad I could talk about all these too, and again with you, with your organization, and with you today.
Yes, thank you so much. So let's wind up this session. I thank all my IFPWD teammates and my organization for giving me this wonderful opportunity to interact with this wonderful organization as well. And my team who worked day and night, and my founder. I thank everybody for being this. So with this word of thanks, we're winding up this session. Yes.